Maria navigated the halls of Northwood High with a quiet confidence that belied her 15 years. She wasn't loud or boisterous, but her presence was undeniable. Honors student, debate club president, and volunteer at the local animal shelter, Maria excelled at everything she put her mind to. Her bedroom walls were adorned with certificates of achievement and photographs of her with her debate team, beaming after a hard-won victory. But Northwood wasn't always easy. Nestled deep in the heart of rural Pennsylvania, the town held a certain charm, but also a subtle undercurrent of suspicion towards outsiders. Maria, with her Filipino heritage and her quiet demeanor, sometimes felt like she was walking a tightrope, constantly aware of the subtle glances and whispered comments. She missed the vibrant, bustling streets of Manila, the comforting aroma of her grandmother's adobo, and the easy camaraderie of her cousins. What anchored her, what made Northwood feel like home, was her stepfather, David. He'd met her mother, Elena, during a diplomatic mission in the Philippines years ago. Their connection was immediate and profound. After marrying, David embraced Maria as his own, learning snippets of Tagalog, patiently helping her with her English homework, and always making sure she felt loved and secure. He wasn't just a stepfather, he was her confidant, her champion, her rock. David's work as a high-ranking Justice Department official often kept him away, but their connection remained strong. Evenings were filled with video calls, where Maria would recount her day, sharing her triumphs and anxieties. David, in turn, would offer gentle guidance and unwavering support, always reminding her of her strength and resilience. He was more than just family, he was her hero, though Maria never would have guessed just how much that heroism would be needed. The trouble began innocently enough, a Friday afternoon trip to Miller's General Store after debate club practice. Maria needed poster board for an upcoming presentation, and Miller's was the only place in town that carried the oversized sheets she required. The store, a local institution, was always bustling with activity, its narrow aisles crammed with everything from hardware supplies to penny candy. While browsing, Maria received a text from her mother about dinner plans. She pulled out her phone to reply, absent-mindedly tucking a small package of colorful markers into her backpack so she could hold her phone more easily. It was a simple oversight, a momentary lapse in attention, but it would soon unravel her world. As she approached the checkout, Mrs. Henderson, the store owner's wife and a woman known for her sharp eyes and even sharper tongue, stopped her. "Hold on there, young lady," she said, her voice laced with suspicion. "I saw you put something in your bag." Maria, confused, opened her backpack to show Mrs. Henderson the poster board. But Mrs. Henderson's gaze was fixed on the markers. "Those aren't yours, are they?" she demanded, her voice rising. Before Maria could explain, Judge Thompson's daughter, Brenda, who worked part-time at the store, chimed in. "I saw her too, Mom. She was trying to hide them." The accusation, amplified by Brenda's enthusiastic endorsement, drew the attention of other shoppers. Maria, mortified and flustered, tried to explain that it was a misunderstanding, an honest mistake. But Mrs. Henderson was having none of it. She called the police, and within minutes, Maria found herself facing accusations of shoplifting, a crime she hadn't committed. What started as a simple trip to the store was rapidly spiraling into a nightmare, all thanks to the prejudice of Mrs. Henderson, the eagerness of Brenda Thompson, and the looming shadow of Judge Thompson himself. Judge Thompson was a fixture in Northwood, a man whose word was law, or so he believed. His stern visage, framed by thinning gray hair and a perpetually furrowed brow, commanded respect, or at least fear. But behind the veneer of judicial authority lay a history of questionable decisions, whispers of favoritism, and a palpable disdain for anyone he deemed other. While never explicitly stated, his prejudice against immigrants was an open secret in the town, a subtle but pervasive bias that colored his judgments. The case against Maria landed on his desk like a gift. He saw it not as a petty theft case, but as an opportunity to make an example, to send a message that outsiders wouldn't be tolerated in Northwood. He seized control of the narrative, subtly influencing the police investigation, ensuring that the evidence, however flimsy, pointed towards Maria's guilt. He pressured Mrs. Henderson to embellish her account, emphasizing Maria's shifty eyes and suspicious behavior. He coached Brenda, his daughter, to exaggerate her testimony, painting Maria as a brazen thief who had deliberately tried to conceal the markers. He even suppressed exculpatory evidence, ignoring the store's security footage that showed Maria distracted by her phone, a key detail that could have explained her actions. Word spread quickly through Northwood. Judge Thompson was determined to make Maria pay. The town, already predisposed to suspicion, readily accepted the narrative he crafted. Maria's attempts to defend herself were met with skepticism and indifference. The judge, with his power and his prejudice, was systematically dismantling her life, brick by brick, building a seemingly airtight case against an innocent girl. He was the architect of her misfortune, and he reveled in his control. The courtroom felt cold and sterile, the air thick with unspoken judgment. Maria sat at the defendant's table, her heart pounding in her chest, feeling smaller and more vulnerable than she ever had before. Her court-appointed lawyer, Mr. Abernathy, seemed overwhelmed, his eyes darting nervously between Maria and Judge Thompson. He offered platitudes about the justice system, but his lack of conviction was palpable. When Maria tried to explain her side of the story, Judge Thompson cut her off, citing procedural rules and interrupting her with thinly veiled accusations. He allowed Mrs. Henderson and Brenda to paint her as a criminal, their words dripping with condescension and thinly disguised animosity. Each objection Mr. Abernathy raised was swiftly dismissed, each attempt to introduce mitigating evidence was blocked. The judge's control was absolute. He ruled every objection, dictated the flow of questioning, and shaped the narrative to fit his preconceived notions. Maria watched in growing despair as her words were twisted, her intentions misinterpreted, and her character assassinated. The courtroom, meant to be a place of justice, felt like a stage for a preordained drama, with her cast as the villain. Despite the overwhelming odds, Maria refused to succumb to despair. The memory of her mother's strength, of David's unwavering belief in her, fueled a flicker of defiance within her. She might be powerless in that courtroom, but she wasn't broken. She would find a way to fight back, to expose the truth, to prove her innocence. The injustice was blatant, the prejudice palpable, but Maria clung to the hope that somehow, someway, justice would prevail. She knew she had one card left to play, one lifeline she desperately hoped would reach her in time. During a brief recess, while Mr. Abernathy was distracted by a phone call, Maria seized her opportunity. Remembering a favor she'd once done for a kind-hearted court clerk, she discreetly slipped her a note, begging for a chance to make a single phone call. The clerk, Mrs. Rodriguez, a mother herself, saw the desperation in Maria's eyes and, against her better judgment, agreed. Moments later, huddled in a small, dusty storage room, Maria clutched a borrowed cell phone, her fingers trembling as she dialed David's number. The rings seemed to echo in the silence, each one amplifying her anxiety. Finally, he answered, his voice warm and familiar, a stark contrast to the coldness she'd experienced in the courtroom. "Maria. Is everything all right?" David asked, his concern immediately evident. "David, I need your help," she stammered, tears welling in her eyes. She quickly recounted the events of the past few days, the accusation, the biased judge, the feeling of helplessness. "They're framing me, David. I didn't do anything wrong." David listened intently, his initial skepticism slowly giving way to a deep unease. He knew Maria, he knew her integrity, her honesty. Shoplifting seemed completely out of character. As the U.S. Attorney General, he was accustomed to hearing elaborate claims of innocence, but there was something in Maria's voice, a raw desperation, that resonated with him. "Maria, I need you to tell me everything, every detail," he said, his voice now firm and focused. He began to ask probing questions, seeking to understand the nuances of the situation. While a part of him, the rational lawyer, struggled to reconcile Maria's story with the evidence presented, another part, the loving stepfather, trusted her implicitly. He knew, deep down, that Maria was telling the truth, and he would do everything in his power to help her. "I believe you, Maria," he said finally, his words a lifeline in her sea of despair. "I'm going to fix this." The moment he hung up the phone, David transformed. The loving stepfather vanished, replaced by the steely-eyed Attorney General, a man known for his sharp intellect and unwavering dedication to justice. He immediately summoned his top aides, his office buzzing with activity as he launched an internal investigation into the situation in Northwood. He tasked his team with uncovering everything they could about Judge Thompson, Mrs. Henderson, and the circumstances surrounding Maria's arrest. He pulled strings, utilizing his vast network of contacts within the Justice Department and beyond, bypassing bureaucratic red tape to expedite the process. He needed answers, and he needed them fast. But the investigation quickly ran into obstacles. Northwood was a small town, fiercely protective of its own. Many of the people he needed to speak with were hesitant, intimidated by Judge Thompson's influence. Others were openly hostile, viewing David's intervention as an intrusion from the outside. Political resistance also emerged. Some within the Justice Department questioned David's impartiality, suggesting that his personal relationship with Maria was clouding his judgment. Whispers of abuse of power began to circulate, fueled by ambitious rivals eager to undermine his authority. David found himself walking a tightrope, balancing his commitment to Maria with his responsibilities as Attorney General. Despite the hurdles, David pressed on, driven by his unwavering belief in Maria's innocence and his outrage at the injustice she was facing. He knew that powerful forces were working against him, but he refused to be deterred. He would use every resource at his disposal, overcome every obstacle, to expose the truth and bring justice to Northwood. The fight for Maria was not just a personal one, it was a fight for the very principles he had sworn to uphold. As David worked tirelessly, memories flooded his mind, transporting him back to the sun-drenched shores of the Philippines. He remembered the first time he saw Elena, Maria's mother, a vision of grace and strength as she addressed a crowd of local farmers, advocating for their rights. He was immediately captivated by her passion, her intelligence, and her unwavering commitment to justice. Their courtship was a whirlwind of shared meals, lively debates, and quiet moments spent exploring the hidden corners of Manila. He immersed himself in Filipino culture, learning about its rich history, its vibrant traditions, and its deep-rooted values. He was welcomed with open arms by Elena's family, who taught him the importance of family, respect, and community. And then there was Maria. She was just a young girl, barely 7 years old, but her intelligence and curiosity were immediately apparent. She peppered him with questions, eager to learn about his life, his work, and his world. He, in turn, was charmed by her wit, her warmth, and her unwavering spirit. When David and Elena married, he didn't just gain a wife, he gained a daughter. He embraced his role as Maria's stepfather with open arms, determined to provide her with the love, support, and guidance she needed to thrive. He learned to speak Tagalog, patiently helped her with her homework, and cheered her on at every school event. He watched her blossom into a bright, confident young woman, proud of her heritage and determined to make a difference in the world. He recalled the countless hours they spent together, sharing stories, laughing, and building a bond that transcended blood. He remembered the day Maria first called him Dad, a moment that filled him with an overwhelming sense of love and responsibility. These memories fueled his determination to fight for her, to protect her from the injustice she was facing. He wouldn't let Judge Thompson, or anyone else, take away the future she deserved. His love for Maria, and his respect for her Filipino heritage, were the driving forces behind his relentless pursuit of justice. David's relentless investigation began to yield disturbing results. His team uncovered a pattern of misconduct by Judge Thompson, a series of cases where he had seemingly bent the law to favor certain individuals and businesses, often at the expense of the town's most vulnerable residents. They found evidence of questionable financial dealings, unreported income, and potential conflicts of interest. But the most alarming discovery was the potential conspiracy involving several influential figures in Northwood. These individuals, including local business owners and politicians, appeared to be exploiting vulnerable members of the community, particularly immigrants and low-income families, through predatory lending practices, unfair labor agreements, and rigged legal proceedings. Judge Thompson seemed to be playing a key role in this scheme, using his position to protect the conspirators and silence their victims. Maria's case, it turned out, was not an isolated incident. It was part of a larger pattern of abuse, a systematic effort to marginalize and exploit those who lacked the resources or the connections to defend themselves. Judge Thompson, driven by his prejudice and his greed, was a willing participant in this conspiracy, using his courtroom as a weapon to enforce the will of the powerful. The investigation revealed a web of corruption that ran deep within the heart of Northwood, a rot that threatened to consume the entire community. David realized that he wasn't just fighting for Maria, he was fighting for the soul of the town, for the principles of justice and equality that were being systematically undermined. He knew that exposing this conspiracy would be dangerous, that it would make him enemies in high places. But he was determined to see it through, to bring the conspirators to justice and to restore faith in the legal system. David's arrival in Northwood sent shockwaves through the small town. The sight of the U.S. Attorney General stepping out of a black SUV, surrounded by a phalanx of federal agents, was enough to turn heads and silence whispers. His presence was a clear signal that the stakes had been raised, that Maria's case had attracted the attention of the highest levels of the Justice Department. Judge Thompson, initially confident in his ability to control the situation, began to feel the pressure. David's arrival exposed him to scrutiny, threatening to unravel the carefully constructed facade he had maintained for so long. He knew that his carefully laid plans were in danger of collapsing, and he became increasingly desperate to protect himself and his co-conspirators. In a desperate attempt to cover his tracks, Judge Thompson intensified his efforts to discredit Maria. He leaked false information to the local media, painting her as a troublemaker and a liar. He pressured Mrs. Henderson to double down on her testimony, even offering her financial incentives to remain steadfast in her accusations. He even attempted to bribe Mr. Abernathy, Maria's court-appointed lawyer, to sabotage her defense. But David was one step ahead. He anticipated Judge Thompson's moves and had already taken steps to protect Maria and expose his machinations. He had assigned a team of federal investigators to monitor Judge Thompson's activities, gathering evidence of his corruption and his attempts to obstruct justice. He was determined to expose the truth, no matter the cost. The stage was set for a dramatic showdown, a battle between justice and corruption that would determine the fate of Maria and the future of Northwood. The courtroom was packed, the atmosphere electric. News of David's investigation and Judge Thompson's alleged corruption had spread like wildfire, drawing spectators from across the county. Maria sat at the defendant's table, her face etched with a mixture of hope and anxiety, as David approached the podium. He began by outlining the evidence of Judge Thompson's misconduct, presenting a meticulously documented case that left no room for doubt. He revealed the judge's questionable financial dealings, his unreported income, and his blatant conflicts of interest. He presented testimony from victims of the conspiracy, individuals who had been exploited and silenced by Judge Thompson and his co-conspirators. He then turned his attention to Maria's case, presenting irrefutable evidence that she had been wrongly accused. He showed the security footage from Miller's General Store, the footage that Judge Thompson had suppressed, which clearly showed Maria distracted by her phone, inadvertently placing the markers in her bag. He presented expert testimony that refuted Mrs. Henderson's claims, demonstrating that Maria's actions were consistent with an honest mistake, not a deliberate act of theft. Finally, David exposed the larger conspiracy, revealing the names of the influential figures who were exploiting vulnerable members of the community. He presented evidence of predatory lending practices, unfair labor agreements, and rigged legal proceedings, all orchestrated by these individuals with Judge Thompson's complicity. As David spoke, the courtroom fell silent. Judge Thompson, his face pale and sweating, watched in stunned disbelief as his carefully constructed world crumbled around him. The evidence was overwhelming, the accusations damning. He knew that his reign of terror was finally coming to an end. With a final, impassioned plea, David defended Maria's innocence, reminding everyone in the courtroom that justice must be blind, that it must be applied equally to all, regardless of their background or their circumstances. The fallout from David's revelations was swift and decisive. Judge Thompson's carefully constructed facade shattered, revealing the personal greed and deep-seated prejudice that had motivated his actions. The evidence presented by David was so overwhelming that even the most ardent supporters of the judge could no longer deny the truth. Federal agents moved in to arrest Judge Thompson, leading him away in handcuffs as a stunned silence fell over the courtroom. The other members of the conspiracy, their faces pale with fear, knew that their time was also running out. The wheels of justice had begun to turn, and they would soon face the consequences of their actions. With Judge Thompson's arrest, Maria's wrongful conviction was immediately overturned. The charges against her were dropped, and she was finally exonerated. The relief that washed over her was immense, a wave of gratitude towards David and a renewed sense of hope for the future. The exposure of Judge Thompson's corruption sent a powerful message to Northwood, a message that prejudice and greed would not be tolerated, that justice would prevail, even in the face of powerful opposition. The town began to grapple with the reality of what had transpired, to confront the deep-seated biases that had allowed such a conspiracy to flourish. The healing process would be long and difficult, but the first step had been taken. Maria, once an outcast, was now seen as a symbol of courage and resilience, a testament to the power of truth and the importance of fighting for what is right. With her name cleared and the truth revealed, Maria returned to Northwood a changed person. The initial suspicion and animosity that had once surrounded her had dissipated, replaced by a wave of support and admiration. People who had previously shunned her now offered words of encouragement and apologies, recognizing the injustice she had endured. Maria was embraced by the community, becoming a symbol of justice and resilience. Her story inspired others to speak out against injustice, to challenge prejudice, and to fight for what is right. She became a role model for young people in Northwood, particularly those from immigrant families, demonstrating that they too could overcome adversity and achieve their dreams. The experience had also profoundly strengthened her bond with David. She had always admired him, but now she saw him in a new light, as a true hero who had risked everything to protect her and to uphold the principles of justice. Their relationship deepened, forged in the crucible of adversity, a testament to the power of love and loyalty. Inspired by David's example and by her own experience, Maria decided to pursue a career in law. She wanted to use her knowledge and her passion to fight for those who had been wronged, to defend the vulnerable, and to ensure that no one else would suffer the same fate she had endured. She knew that the road ahead would be long and challenging, but she was determined to make a difference, to use her voice to advocate for justice and equality. The injustice she experienced had not broken her, it had empowered her, giving her a sense of purpose and a determination to make the world a better place. In the years that followed, Maria and David remained deeply involved in the effort to reform the local justice system in Northwood. David, leveraging his influence as Attorney General, worked with local officials and community leaders to implement reforms that would prevent similar injustices from occurring in the future. They established oversight committees, implemented stricter ethical guidelines for judges and law enforcement officers, and created programs to support vulnerable members of the community. Maria, while pursuing her law degree, became a passionate advocate for justice reform. She volunteered at legal aid clinics, providing assistance to low-income families and immigrants. She spoke at community events, sharing her story and inspiring others to get involved in the fight for equality. She also worked closely with David, providing him with valuable insights and perspectives based on her own experiences. Together, they became a formidable force for change, working tirelessly to create a more just and equitable society. Their partnership was a testament to the power of family, the importance of standing up for what is right, and the enduring strength of the human spirit. The story of Maria and David serves as a reminder that even in the face of overwhelming adversity, justice can prevail. It highlights the importance of family, the need to challenge prejudice, and the power of individuals to make a difference in the world. It demonstrates that even the smallest act of kindness, the simplest expression of support, can have a profound impact on someone's life. And it underscores the enduring message that, with courage, determination, and an unwavering commitment to justice, anything is possible. The fight for a better world is never easy, but it is always worth fighting for.